This is Grace Notes. I'm Alan Button. Our guest today is Susan Henson. Susan is the founder and president of a prison ministry called Pharaoh's Daughter. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you.
Susan, to get us started, why don't you tell us first what Pharaoh's Daughter is?
Pharaoh's Daughter is a prison ministry mainly for the pregnant women who are incarcerated in Raleigh. For the women who don't have a safe place for their baby to go, we will take their babies straight from the hospital and raise them until they are released. And then at that point, we invite the moms to also come and live with us so that we can help them get back on their feet before they take off on their own.
You were telling me before we came into the studio that this is not really something that you ever envisioned as you're being involved in.
Right.
How did you get into it? How did it come to be?
Well, very interesting. You know, God has different ways of doing things. But after my kids were all grown, I was looking 50 pretty soon in the face. One of my daughters called me. She said that she had seen a program in another state of how they handle the babies that are born to women in prison. And she was very concerned because it mentioned some of the states that had any programs like that, and North Carolina was not one of them. So she called me almost in a panic, and she said, "We've got to do something about this." I didn't embrace that completely at the beginning, but over time, it really went from my head to my heart, and I began to feel like this was my calling. And I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I had a roof over my head, and I had a safe place to live, but these babies did not.
Tell us, Susan, a little bit more about your background before you established Pharaoh's Daughter.
Well, I have 4 children of my own, and they each got to participate in their siblings' birth and in, helping mommy with the baby stuff. So we really appreciate little babies just from early years. I always wanted children and was happy that I was able to have 4 of them. We've done a lot of things around the house, homeschooling, home birthing, just doing a lot of things from the home. I think the home is very important. And I think that is probably part of this piece that grabbed my daughter's heart and then has grabbed mine. And then, the rest of my family, even my parents, come and hold babies as well. So we're all in this together.
We'll come back in a few minutes to some of the details of what exactly Pharaoh's Daughter does and is. But tell us about this song that you've identified, Billy Joel's Piano Man.
Yeah, I love the song because it exposes how we all have a story, even to Billy Joel himself. Everyone has a story, and they're all there listening to the music and drinking a beer, all for different reasons. But they leave that place and get on a different path. And it's so easy to judge people from the outside. You might walk into that bar and think that everyone there is a ne'er-do-well or, has issues in their life or whatever. But I think if we take the time to get to know people and their stories, we become less judgmental, and we might even be drawn into their story.
Boy, an important perspective for the kind of ministry that you're involved in. Every woman with whom you deal has got a story, for sure. Well, let's hear the song, Piano Man by Billy Joel. That was Piano Man by Billy Joel. If you're just joining us, our guest today is Susan Henson, the founder and president of Pharaoh's Daughter. Before we went to the song, Susan, we were talking about how everybody has a story, and boy, that song really emphasizes that point. Can you generalize in any way about the stories that represent the women with whom you deal? And I guess by that I mean, can you say something about the need generally that Pharaoh's Daughter is trying to address?
I have found that there are so many women in that position of being pregnant and incarcerated who are facing a real tough decision. about where to place their babies. And one of the places that they can place their baby is back home. Home could mean their mother and father or an aunt or whatever. But I hear these women's stories of how they were raised. And this means sending their baby back into a kind of rough situation. It can be very often.
And these, by the way, these typically are women who have become pregnant before they've been incarcerated.
That is correct.
Is that right?
Yes, yes. So pregnancy to me was always the sacred thing. I couldn't imagine, doing a crime while I was pregnant. So at the beginning, putting pregnancy and incarceration in the same sentence just was mind-boggling to me. Their stories play a really big part in it because one of the dilemmas is whether they should risk letting a family member raise their child until they get out. And the stories that I've heard have been heart-wrenching. You wonder how one human being can do the things that they do to another human being, and especially when they're children. But some of these abusive situations continue along and sort of haunt these women too, so that it's not just as they were raised as children, but it can also be their adult relationships as well. So they just have a leg down, I think. And that's where my heart goes out to these women, not just their babies, but also to help these women realize that they are valuable and they are beloved.
You were saying that they traditionally only have two choices, and I think I cut you off. One is to send the babies home, and these are babies born in prison. Right. What's the other alternative?
That would be foster care through the social services system in this state. And part of what happens there is that a child can be eligible for adoption if the parent is not keeping in contact with the child, which that's hard from a prison cell. So, besides the system being overcrowded and there being more babies than families to take care of them, it is rather a dismal choice. The mother would lose contact with the child most likely during that time of incarceration. And then once she's out, she has to prove herself in order to get her child back. So she has to already be fairly stable in order for the system to give her child back. Whereas with Pharaoh's daughter, we commit to visiting the mother every week with her child, and we make a phone available so that she can make phone calls and talk to her baby and hear about the milestones that are happening. So that's very different than just sending your child somewhere and not having any contact during the incarceration.
So you actually take the child home with you?
We do. We pick the child up from the hospital and we take the child home with us and we raise it like the child is our own. We are sure to take lots of videos and pictures. We send a packet of pictures to the mom every month, which again allows her to see the milestones and the growth that her child is having.
You've identified another song for us that seems to fit in pretty well here. We Are the World. Tell us why that's special to you.
Well, I've come to realize that my worldview is that we're all in this life thing together. We're all in the same boat. And it does matter when one of us on this planet helps another one. I think it goes far beyond the one who reaches out and then the one who's getting the service or the care. I think that has a ripple effect throughout our entire world. And I think that can happen in the negative too. I think when we do things to one another that aren't kind, that can also have a ripple effect. So I love that this song is speaking about coming together with a single purpose in order to help some people who are having a rough time of things.
And you were telling me before we came into the studio that the writing of the song itself actually is reflective of that principle. We have in this song a number of very well-known artists who got together for that common purpose of raising funds for African needs.
Yeah, and I think that we all have an opportunity to use whatever gifts we have. And in that example, those were very well-known artists that could come together and had the opportunity to raise significant funds for Africa.
Let me go through the list here. The song actually was written by Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie, but it includes in the singing Stevie Wonder, Paul Simon, Kenny Rogers, James Ingram, Tina Turner, Billy Joel. They all participated in the first verse. And then we have Dionne Warwick, Willie Nelson, Al Jarreau. Then we have Bruce Springsteen, Kenny Loggins, Steve Perry, and Daryl Hall. We also have Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper, and Kim Carnes. And then it wraps up with Bob Dylan and Ray Charles. Quite a crew.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear the song, We Are the World, by USA for Africa. USA standing for United Support of Artists for Africa.
There comes a time
That was We Are the World by a number of artists well known to our listeners, given our playlist. Our guest today is Susan Henson. Susan is the founder and president of Pharaoh's Daughter. And Susan, you were telling us something about the specifics of what it is Pharaoh's Daughter does and what it is you do with the pregnant female inmates after they give birth. Tell us a little bit more about the stages of your ministry in terms of working with any particular woman.
Oh, well, we like to contact our moms as early as possible. As it turns out, sometimes it's her prior baby plans that have failed for one reason or the other that makes them turn to Pharaoh's Daughter. So sometimes we don't have a lot of time to build a rapport and to get to know that mom. We try to do that through letters if possible. We send an application, try to find a little bit of background with her. But in theory, we'd love to visit during the pregnancy. And if time allows, we do that. But the very first contact that we have normally after we establish that we'll be the people picking the baby up from the hospital is to go to the hospital when the baby is just a day or two old. As soon as the mother is released to go back to prison, then the hospital calls us and we go and pick up the baby. So we start taking care of that baby, and then we, as soon as possible, jump into our weekly visits with the mom in prison. So we bring that little newborn baby into the prison so that she can hold it. And well, at that stage, they're not doing a whole lot more than being held, but she can't feed or change the baby, but she can visit with the baby. And then during those visits, we get to know her a little bit better too. And then, we continue that until the mom is released. And once she is released, we then invite her to come back to Pharaoh's Daughter to get on her feet. So that would mean different things to different women. If the mom doesn't have a high school diploma, we make sure that she, first things first, would be getting a GED. And then any further training or education that she might need to really have a career that would work for her and earning enough money that she could raise her family on that income. And then we really aren't expecting her to leave Pharaoh's Daughter until those things are in place. So she has a job, she has a place to live, and we feel comfortable that she will be able to provide for her child.
And the ultimate objective then is to have this family unit stabilized.
Correct, yes.
What kind of interaction do you have with the Department of Social Services?
They have some sort of an agreement with the prison that they come and do a home inspection to any person that's down on that baby plan. So that would mean, when that mom puts my name on her baby plan, meaning the hospital would call me to come pick up the baby, then the Department of Social Services calls me, comes to my house, gives an inspection. We have a little interview, and they make sure that it's a safe environment for the child to come. And then if that's the case, and they give the okay that I can, in fact, come and pick up that baby.
It occurred to me just now as you were talking that I should have started by asking where the name of your organization came from. Pharaoh's Daughter. What's that about?
Well, it's taken after the Moses story in the Bible, where the Pharaoh's daughter raises the Israelite. So back in that day, the Israelites were slaves. And so naturally, Moses would have been raised as a slave. But because he was adopted by the Pharaoh's daughter, he was then raised in the palace. So when God had his greatest work for Moses, which was to, you may be familiar with the Ten Commandments, but, when he marched into the Pharaoh and told him to let my people go, he was really going back to his own home. The place that he was very familiar with and was raised there. And so we're hoping that we will turn the tide on this generational incarceration thing, that these children that come to Pharaoh's Daughter will not have expectations of going to prison themselves.
What an appropriate name, Pharaoh's Daughter. You've identified, Susan, another song, Bless the Broken Road by Rascal Flatts. Why that song?
I think this applies to all of us. And that is, we are where we are and who we are because of everything that's ever happened to us. And our character is built more from the broken roads than the smooth roads. And I love this song because whether you've been through broken roads or you are in a broken road, you can have the faith that one day this very broken road that you're in will help you become someone that you will be very happy that you have become. And I hear these stories from these women that if it were not for Pharaoh's daughter, if it were not for being incarcerated and pregnant, what would my life be like? And I can really say the same thing. Where would I be had I not gone through the pain of divorce and having one of my children incarcerated and knowing that end of things? Then there would not be a Pharaoh's daughter.
Susan, if people would like more information, where can they go to get that?
All of our information is on our website, and that is pharaohsdaughternc.org. And most people have a problem with spelling Pharaoh's daughter.
Yeah,
so,
let's do that. Go ahead.
So just remember there's an A on both sides of the R, so it's PHARAOHS, daughter, NC, like North Carolina, .org.
Great. An A on both sides of the R.
Correct.
PharaohsDaughterNC.org. Well, Susan, it's been a real pleasure to have you here today, and we wish you the very best in the ministry as you go forward with Pharaoh's daughter, and look forward to hearing more down the road about how it's going.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, it's clear that you're meeting a real need in a very special way. Let's hear the song, Bless the Broken Road, by Rascal Flatts. You've been listening to Grace Notes, a special program here on Life 103.1 featuring people who may be relatively unknown, but who meet life's challenges in ways that brighten the lives of those around them. Our producer is Christina Dolan. I'm Alan Button, and we invite you to join all of us here at the station again next Friday at 5:30 for Grace Notes on Life 103.1.